Having a conflict at work is inevitable. With us managing so many competing priorities, negotiating limited resources, and aiming to be both tactical and strategic, it's amazing that any work gets done at all. And despite the fact that so many situational, organizational, and systemic issues in our companies contribute to our stress, we tend to point to the other person as the problem. We ask, who screwed this up, rather than, hey, what's going on? We complain that John didn't tell us what this project's all about, rather than advocate that the team would benefit from some additional context. We claim Dana is impossible to pin down, rather than inquiring, who could help me get on Dana's calendar? These approaches are unproductive and undermine relationships and outcomes. As Ronald Heifetz and Marty Linsky, authors of Leadership on the Line, Staying Alive Through the Dangers of Leading, would say, we stay on the dance floor where our vision is limited to the person directly in front of us, rather than move up to the balcony where we can see what's happening from an observer's perspective. On the dance floor, the problem looks like John or Dana or whomever is stepping on our toes. On the balcony, we can see the bigger picture and are able to observe patterns and systems, the moves, that are contributing to the conflict. Heifetz and Linsky write, the only way you can gain both a clearer view of reality and some perspective of the bigger picture is by distancing yourself from the fray. Of course, it's often quicker and easier for you to label a person as the problem, especially if you're working with somebody who has a reputation for being difficult. That being said, it will likely be quicker and easier for them to label you as the problem too. And then where are you? Stuck on the dance floor, stepping on each other's toes. Or you could take a step up to the balcony, perhaps even together, to see if you can get some big picture perspective. Here are some common balcony observations that you might notice about what's happening on the dance floor instead of blaming someone for stepping on your toes, and what to say to bring it up. Download the attached worksheet to help you follow along and decide what conversations you may need to have. I think we need to clarify who is responsible, who is accountable, who else should be involved, consulted, or informed, what a successful outcome should look like, how this project fits into the bigger picture, what resources are available to me, what the risks are, what we can learn from past experiences doing something similar, how much autonomy we have, who we can ask for help. I would like us to have more time to process what has been shared with me, analyze the data, plan the work, communicate the plan, reprioritize my work or the work of others, identify or secure resources, learn how to do it, execute the tasks, get others up to speed, get buy-in or agreement, address others' questions and concerns. I notice we could improve our ability to manage and communicate expectations clearly, negotiate competing priorities, set and maintain boundaries, communicate more regularly, discuss progress. I'm having a hard time managing my stress level, getting on your calendar, advocating for what I need, saying no. When you focus less on who is doing what to you and more on what may be happening in the system, you're more likely to find solutions that work better, for longer, and for more people. Some conversations feel more manageable than others. And for those that feel especially tricky, we may be prone to avoiding them altogether. Why? Well, you might think that by avoiding a conversation, you can prevent hurt feelings, yours or theirs. Or you may tell yourself that you just don't have enough information to have the talk yet. Perhaps you're not sure how they'll react, or you can predict exactly how they'll react and you don't want any part of that. Here are some common mindsets that keep us quiet. I should just keep this to myself. Asking for what I need will be an uncomfortable conversation. I should put the team's needs ahead of my own. I don't have the time to advocate for what I want. I will be seen as pushy. Any of those sound familiar? And yes, there are times where the situation may resolve itself, or your concern isn't critical to the relationship or the work product, or the time to address it has really, truly passed. But far too often, we make up excuses for why we should delay or skip a conversation. And then we may minimize the problem, pretend we don't see the problem, hope that somebody else will address the problem, talk to everyone else about the problem other than the person we're having the problem with, or just pray it goes away. When that happens, we need some new mindsets and some new language to help us step into a potentially uncomfortable conversation with the goal of achieving an outcome and tending to the relationship. Download the handout attached to this video to follow along. Here are some new mindsets to try. My needs are valid as anyone else's. If I don't start the conversation, who will? I'm curious about what could happen if I asked for what I needed. The most successful professionals model self-awareness, and that's what I'm doing. Telling the truth is a brilliant way to create healthy relationships. Which of these would you be willing to try? And what impact do you hope it will have? Now, let's look at some language you can use to approach something or someone who feels unapproachable to you. I'd like to talk about something that feels important to me. When would be a good time for a conversation? I need blank to feel engaged, respected, safe at work, and I have some ideas of what we could do differently. I am happy in my role, and I recognize that there's something else I need to feel even happier. I notice I or we have a pattern. Here's what I see. What do you think? I've been avoiding talking to you until now because I'm not always sure the best time or way to approach you. I realized that I should have brought this up sooner. Not every conversation needs to happen, but there are plenty you could be having instead of avoiding. And these tips will help you have more of them more smoothly. Wouldn't it be nice if we had the perfect thing to say in every disagreement? It would be, but it's not realistic. When we're in conflict with others, we can get emotionally flooded. And when that happens, we don't think clearly, and we definitely don't make the most helpful comments. This is when we need a breather. A breather calms us down and gives us time to consider our responses. My friend and colleague, Carol Ward, LCSW, confidence-building expert and author, shares 4 different types of breather sentences, and you can download the attached worksheet to follow along. Affirmation breathers. This technique fulfills an important psychological need for most of us, the need to be seen and heard. These sentences affirm the other person while giving you the space to state your opinion. Practice using affirmative language when somebody says something with which you don't agree or they interrupt you. For example, I appreciate your perspective and I have some additional thoughts on the subject that I'd like to discuss. I get or I appreciate that you want to share your thoughts and I'm willing to hear them. However, I'm going to need to finish up first before we move on. Speculation breathers. Sometimes your perceptions about a situation or person might be off the mark, even if you really truly think that you know what the other person's intention is. Using language and a tone of voice that expresses curiosity is a great way to find out information. Speculation allows you to explore issues calmly before they escalate. Some examples include, I'm curious. I see you made decisions on the project and didn't inform me, and I'd like to understand why that happened. I may be off in my perception, but it appears to me that you are upset, avoiding, or not getting back to me for some reason. Is that accurate? De-escalation breathers. There will be times when you know that your intention was coming from a good place, but the impact you have on the other person isn't a positive one. Having the courage to find out what has upset the other person is usually beneficial to both of you. Use the technique of de-escalation, pausing, and affirmation to help get a dialogue going. For example, I'm surprised at your perspective, and I'd like to understand more of why you feel that way. I get or understand that you feel angry, upset, dismissed. Please know that it wasn't my intention, but I get that you don't feel that way. Exploration breathers. Sometimes we run into resistance from another person, but keep trying to convince them why they should agree or commit to something we want. Chances are there's a reason that they're resistant, that they're not sharing with us, or that they themselves may not yet be aware of. Using exploration might get both of you to the real reason why they're hesitant. Examples include, I'm curious or want to understand why you seem resistant to committing to this project or collaboration. Once they explain, you can say, I appreciate you sharing that with me, and while I would still like you to participate, I understand why there's a conflict. Is there any way we can compromise? I realize I haven't shared why this project or collaboration is important to me, and here's why. And I appreciate you hearing me out. You still might not get what you want, but at least the truth of why it matters will be expressed. Before you head down a path that sets one or both of you up for unproductive conflict, take a breath and use a breather. A typical workday for most of us is filled with conversations. Managers and direct reports discuss what work needs to be accomplished, by when, and what success should look like. Colleagues talk about the impact that recent changes are having on their roles and their teams. Leaders articulate their visions for the company's future and how to execute on that. And everybody's talking about the season finale of their favorite TV show, how the local sports team rallied or failed to rally in last night's game, or the weather. As Linda Lambert, PhD, author of Liberating Leadership Capacity, put it, one good conversation can shift the direction of change forever. But that only works with topics you're willing to have a conversation about. Every organization has, quote, elephants in the room, or obvious problems and difficult situations that people avoid discussing. As Chris Argyris, professor emeritus at Harvard Business School, explained, these topics become undiscussable to avoid surprise, embarrassment, or threat. Furthermore, we tend not to bring up topics when we think to ourselves, I'm sure someone else will bring it up so I don't have to, known as diffusion of responsibility. In addition, we avoid discussing subjects where the perceived threat is social rejection, perhaps thinking to ourselves, if I say something this time, I'll be left out of future conversations. And few of us want to be the person who is being avoided, shunned, or ignored. In their book, The Thin Book of Naming Elephants, How to Surface Undiscussables for Greater Organizational Success, authors Sue Annis Hammond and Andrea B. Mayfield write that paying attention to what people talk about and what they don't talk about is often an overlooked key to organizational success. What kind of organizational success? The kind where employees are more satisfied with their jobs, perform better, and are less likely to quit. So, what should you do rather than ignore the elephant? Hammond and Mayfield advise you to learn how to have constructive dialogue with all levels of the organization, where constructive dialogue is defined as people talking to each other in a respectful manner that allows information to be shared and acted on. Here are 3 elephants that may be small enough to start with, but big enough to make a significant impact if addressed. 1. Whose contributions to our team's conversations seem to get prioritized, and which ones seem to get minimized? Contributions from those who can think on their feet may get prioritized over those who prefer to take some time to think about it. Contributions from men may get prioritized over those from women. Contributions from people who are physically present in the office may get prioritized over those who work remotely or in other offices. 2, what personal needs seem to take precedence over others? People with young kids may get a flexible schedule where others don't. People with physical health challenges may get treated differently than those with mental health challenges. Those with interests and hobbies similar to the boss's may get more flexibility than those whose interests differ. 3, what bad behavior is permitted to continue? An assistant who regularly comes in late and leaves early, but who doesn't have an agreed-upon arrangement to do so. A whip-smart employee who acts out or withdraws and is written off as, well, that's just how he is. A colleague who turns in written work that hasn't been proofread, and others on the team need to clean it up. So, here's how to bring it up with the boss. I've noticed a dynamic on our team that I'm curious or concerned about. I'd like to share what I'm noticing and get your perspective as well. Would you be willing to have a conversation with me about it? And if so, when would be a good time? And what if you are the boss? Well, here's how to create a safe environment for people to bring things up with you. I know that in every organization, there are some topics that seem undiscussable, which can lead to frustration, fear, and resentment. Our organization is no exception, and that's not the culture I want to create. Would you be willing to share with me at least one topic that you've avoided bringing up so far? And what commitment you need from me in order to feel comfortable sharing your perspective with me. Whatever you do, don't let the elephant in the room grow so big that it squeezes you and other talented employees out of the company. As author and leadership expert Margaret Wheatley said, be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. People managers wear many hats. Delegator, goal setter, accountability partner, brainstorming buddy, performance evaluator, obstacle mover, resource allocator, and more. This, of course, is all in addition to their day jobs of actual work. And there's one critical role for managers that often doesn't get addressed: career developer. According to research by Right Management, the global career and talent development expert within Manpower Group, only 16% of employees indicate that they have ongoing conversations with their managers about their careers. 82% of employees report that they would be more engaged if their manager incorporated these ongoing career conversations into their day-to-day reporting processes. Nevertheless, with all the other work that a supervisor has to do, it's not surprising that career development conversations can fall off the radar. But it's not only because there's too much to do and not enough time. Many managers are unskilled or uncomfortable or both at having these conversations. For some, they may not know how to bring up career development without it sounding like they're hinting that it's time for their employee to move on. For others, they may not know what options for career advancement exist within the company and therefore may not want to offer what they may not be able to deliver. And still others may resist discussing it with employees who have made themselves indispensable in their roles. Think about it. Why would someone want to bring up how you could move on to another role if they can't spare you? Regardless of whether it's challenging or confusing, it is your manager's job to have these discussions. And if you're the people manager, it's your job. And regardless, it is still your job to bring it up. Ultimately, you are accountable for how your career advances. So if your boss isn't bringing it up, you should. And if your boss is only bringing it up once a year, you'll need to increase the frequency. That is, unless you're truly ready to stay in the role you're in for the long haul. So let's assume that you've taken the initial 2 steps of 1, telling your boss that you'd like to discuss your career goals, and 2, asking to schedule the discussion at a time that works for both of you. What do you say next? Here are 3 ways to address your career development with a boss who may be putting it off, fumbling for words, or avoiding it completely. 1, Focus on your desire to be challenged. I'm anticipating that I'll be ready for a new challenge in the next 3 to 6 months. I'd like to talk to you about what opportunities there are for me to do that here. 2, talk about fit. I'd like to share the parts of my job that I enjoy and feel like are a good fit for my skills and interests. And I'd like to tell you about the parts of my job that I feel like are a mismatch. I think there could be other roles I might be better suited for. 3, make it about mastery. As part of my overall career plan, I'd like to master a new set of skills and learn about a different area of the business. Can we talk about how I can do that here? And then what? Have a dialogue and listen for clues and cues that your boss is open to partnering with you and your current and future career success. Managers take notice of employees who show initiative in their own career development. And if the notice they take isn't supportive about what you want for your learning and growth, it may be time to find a new manager or a new job.